Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session of verbal and non-verbal communication, one of the most important topics in communication skills and employability. So, whenever we hear the word communication, most people immediately think about speaking. However, communication is much more than simply talking. Every day we communicate through words, our facial expression, our tone of voice, our body language, and even our silence. Imagine attending a job interview. You may answer every question correctly, but if you avoid eye contact, sit with poor posture, or appear nervous, the interviewer may still form a negative expression impression. Similarly, a teacher delivering an excellent lecture with no enthusiasm or expression may struggle to keep the students engaged. So this shows us that communication is not only about what we say, but also about how we say it. So by the end of today's lecture, you will understand the difference between verbal and non-verbal communication, why it is important, and how you can use both effectively in your academic as well as your professional life. So let's get started and look at what it is. So human communication, it works on two parallel tracks. Human communication uh, works on two parallel tracks. The first is the verbal communication, which refers to communicating through words, and the second is the non-verbal communication, which includes everything other than words. So whenever we communicate, both of these happens simultaneously. For example, suppose somebody say, "I'm happy to help." If they say it with a smile, a friendly tone, or open posture, we believe they genuinely mean it. However, if they say the exact same words while looking very annoyed, avoiding eye contact, and crossing their arms, we may feel that they are not really willing to help. So the words remain exactly the same, but the message changes completely because of the non-verbal communication. Therefore, effective communication requires us to pay attention to both our words and our body language. Let's look at what verbal communication is. Let's understand what verbal communication is. Verbal communication means communicating through spoken or written words, written language. It includes conversations, classroom discussions, interviews, presentations, emails, reports, assignments, text messages, and even social media posts. So, an important part of verbal communication is not just choosing the right words, but also selecting the appropriate vocabulary, sentence structure, and tone. Let's consider this simple sentence. I am fine. If it is spoken calmly with a smile, it suggests that everything is actually fine. But if it is spoken sharply or sarcastically, it may indicate anger, frustration, or disappointment. This reminds us that words alone do not always convey the complete message. Let's also look at the types of verbal communication. It is divided into two main types. The first one is oral communication and written communication. So, oral communication includes face-to-face conversations, classroom discussions, meetings, presentations, phone calls, interviews, and group discussions as well. Oral communication allows immediate interaction because both people can ask questions and receive instant responses. And the second type of communication is written communication. So, written communication includes emails, reports, letters, assignments, notices, official documents, etc. So, unlike oral communication, written communication creates a permanent record and allows the reader to revisit the information whenever necessary. So, in a professional life, both oral and written communication are equally important. A good engineer, a teacher, a good manager, or entrepreneur may be able to communicate effectively in both these forms. Let's look more closely at oral communication. Um, Imagine that you are attending a campus interview. The interviewer may ask you, tell me about yourself. So many students know the answer, but they struggle because they speak too fast, they hesitate frequently, or they lack confidence. So always remember that in oral communication, recruiters they do not evaluate only your content. They also observe your pronunciation, fluency, confidence, clarity, tone, and body language. So when speaking, always organize your ideas before you begin. Speak clearly. Avoid filler words such as like, and too often. Don't say it very often. Pause naturally between ideas rather than speaking continuously. A calm and confident voice always creates a strong impression than speaking very quickly. Then let's look at written communication. Writing is one of the most common forms of communication in a professional life. Every organization depends on emails, reports, proposals, notices, and documentation. So let's compare uh, two messages. The first one simply says send file. Although the meaning is understandable, it sounds rude and incomplete. Now consider this version. Could you please share the updates presentation file by 5 p.m. today? Both the messages requires the same thing. However, the second message is polite, professional, and specific. So good written communication should always be clear, grammatically correct, concise, and courteous. Always remember that your writing represents your professionalism. Now let's discuss the four essential elements of effective verbal communication, that is clarity, tone, vocabulary choice, and the structure. Let's look at clarity. So your message should be very easy to understand. You should avoid very vague statements. Instead of saying we will do it later, say we will complete it by uh, Friday evening. Specific communication reduces confusion. Then let's also look at tone, which reflects your emotions. So the same sentence can sound polite, rude, friendly, sarcastic, or angry depending on your tone of voice. This is especially important in customer service, teaching, interviews, and teamwork, which always aim for respectable and positive tone. Then vocabulary choice. Choose words which are appropriate to your audience. When speaking with professors, managers, or clients, formal vocabulary is appropriate. When speaking with your close friends, informal language may be acceptable. Professional communication requires adapting your language to the situations. Finally, every good explanation follows a logical order. So begin with an introduction, explain your main idea, support it with examples, and finish with a conclusion. Whether you are giving a presentation, answering interview questions, or writing a report, a well-organized structure help your audience understand your message very easily. Now let's move on to non-verbal communication. So non-verbal communication means communicating without using words. Interestingly, people often believe body language more than spoken language. So if your words and body language contradict each other, people usually trust your body language. So there are several important aspects of non-verbal communication like facial expression, eye contact, gestures, postures, distance, appearances, and even silence. Facial expressions. Our face is one of the most powerful communicators. A smile, a smile shows friendliness. A frown shows confusion. Raised eyebrows indicate surprise. Students often say, yes, I understood, but their confused facial expression tells a different story. Eye contact. Eye contact builds trust and confidence. Too little eye contact may suggest nervousness. Too much eye contact may appear intimidating. Balanced eye contact makes you appear confident and attentive. Posture. The way you sit or stand communicates your attitude. Standing straight such as confidence, leaning forward indicates interest, slouching may suggest laziness, crossed arm sometimes indicate defensiveness, professional posture immediately improve your overall impression. Hand movement can also strengthen your message. Controlled gestures make presentation more engaging. However, excessive or random hand movements may distract your audience. So use gestures naturally in order to emphasize important points. Personal space. Distance also communicates meaning, right? So standing close to friends is perfectly normal. However, standing too close during interviews or formal meetings may make others uncomfortable. Respecting personal space demonstrates professionalism. Appearance. People often form their first impression before you even begin speaking. Clean, neat, and professional attire communicates preparedness and confidence. This does not mean wearing expensive clothes. It simply means dressing appropriately for the occasion. Finally, silence also communicates. So thoughtful pause before answering a difficult question shows confidence. However, uh, remaining silent because of nervousness may create a negative impression. Sometimes silence adds emphasis to important ideas. So remember, silence is a form of communication. Let's compare verbal and nonverbal communication. Verbal communication uses words and can be spoken or written. It is generally easier to control because we consciously choose our words. Nonverbal communication uses body language, facial expressions, gestures, postures, eye contact, and appearances. It is often subconscious, making it more difficult to fake. So the effective communicators ensure that both verbal and nonverbal messages support each other. So when your words, tone, and body language all communicate the same message, people trust you more. So, as we conclude today's session, remember one important lesson: communication is happening all the time, even when you are silent, when you are listening, when you enter a room. So, people constantly interpret your words, your expression, your posture, and your behavior. So, effective communication is not simply about speaking fluently, it is also about ensuring that the message you intend to send is the same message that others receive. So, as future professionals, whether you become engineers, managers, researchers, entrepreneurs, your communication skill will play a major role in your success. So, practice speaking confidently, writing professionally, and also maintain positive body language every day, because all these small improvements in communication can create very big opportunities in your career. So these six these six are the core communication skills. You have listening skills, emotional intelligence, non-verbal communication, feedback skills, intercultural communication, verbal communication, etc. All these are a part of your communication skills. So we have come to the end of today's session, verbal and non-verbal communication. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you all the very best in your academic and your professional journey as well. Thank you.